Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. We are here today with Carly Poole and Jay Poole from Buckeye Marine in Bobcaygeon, Ontario. I never know if I pronounced that correctly, but it looks like
you got it.
You got it. I got it. Thanks for joining us today. Appreciate it. We're going to talk a little bit about service departments today and service department efficiency and some kind of new way of thinking that we can apply to our businesses for our service departments. Before we get started, Carly and Jay, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourselves and a little bit about Buckeye Marine?
Sure. I'll go first. We are siblings, and we are in our family's business. We've been in business since 1949. We're the fourth generation in the business, and I am the operations manager. Jay's the technical service manager, but together we run the service department. And as we were talking about earlier, Jay's phenomenal with mechanical things and understanding of things, which I am not strong at. And I'm good at administrative things. So together we feel like we make the perfect service manager in two people. So it's a good mix for us. And it works well for us. We are committed to a great team that we have here. And yeah, what else?
We're a northern dealer as well. So service, storage, winterization is a big part of our business. So all the logistics that go around with that. We're in a cottage area, so we don't have we have a surprisingly small amount of trailer boaters because people will just keep their boat at their cottage. So lots of logistics in getting the boats to and from, and then a lot of the boats sit on our lot trailerless, so getting them in and out without trailers and stuff. So lots, we've got, like every other dealership, they've got their own sort of logistical challenges. We've got our own, but we work with an awesome team to get things moving as best we can.
I think the other point about that northern climate thing is it is currently February, and we have all of our techs in the shop, and they are turning wrenches and doing fiberglass repairs. So well, I'm not sure anyone has completely mastered winter work. We do it. So
yeah, I can relate here in Minneapolis, of course. So that is a good question to kind of start with. Are you said you got your techs in there. Have you always kept techs employed all winter long and turning wrenches and so forth?
Not. It's not consistent and never to this level. Very consistent and done well with our fiberglass shop being on all winter long, keeping doing big repair jobs and also doing lots of like restoration work. Mechanical this year is probably one of our biggest in terms of having the amount of staff that we've kept. We've kept almost all of our techs on, and then just keeping, being able to get things in and out and being organized is, we're definitely in both feet right now.
Yeah. It's probably important to mention that we are in Canada, and COVID has caused a lot of restrictions here. So for the past 2 years, 2020 and 2021, we were effectively shut down for a good chunk of the winter season.
January to May.
Yeah, because of government regulations. So even if we wanted to have had staff in place, we couldn't necessarily to the extent that we would want. And it really hurt in the springtime. We certainly lost out on revenue because we weren't able to fix things in time. And of course, when you can't diagnose something, you can't get parts in time, and the snowball creates a much larger.
Right. And there's enough challenges trying to get parts these days.
Exactly.
So this year, the scenario is better and you're going to be able to do spring launch and all that stuff on time? Yeah, so far. When does spring launch start?
Usually end of April. It depends on when the ice goes out, but usually, end of April, we're rolling storage boats out.
Right.
Yeah, we're typically, to stay ahead of our spring launch, we are doing, shop tests and PDI testing on outboards and stuff, like with ice on the water. And then as things melt, we kind of try to stay, we're trying, it's always our goal to stay about 2 weeks ahead of launch. And, that's a sliding scale always.
Yeah, end of April is when customers would actually take something.
Yeah. In the area that you're in, are they residents or are they more vacation homes?
That's changing with COVID. We've seen a lot more permanent residents now because people have moved out of the city. They've realized, oh, I can work from my cottage. Sure. It's a much more laid back lifestyle, and they've moved up here permanently. We are definitely seeing more Teslas that we've ever seen before. Yeah. So we know that there's a lot more people that are relocating up here to their cottages. So it is definitely in flux at the moment.
The other place where we really feel that, the shift to, permanent summer residency, lake house versus cottage, is in the repair cycle time. Like before it was like, yo, yeah, I gotta go to the city from Monday till Thursday night. As long as you've got it for Friday, I'm good. Now it's like, no, I live and work here. Yeah. So the boat needs to be fixed ASAP. Right. And so now you don't feel that, come and grab it on Monday, pick it up on Friday. Now it's like, no. If you can't fix it at my dock, I need it ASAP.
Yeah, all new pressures. All new pressure. That's cool. Well, great. So how about as far as, it seems like everybody's dealing with workforce issues out there these days. Are you guys dealing with some of the same?
For quite a long time now, we have sort of had a grow your own program here. Yeah. So of the 5 mechanical techs we have in our shop, 3 of them are guys that started cleaning boats here, and the 2 fiberglass guys, both of those started cleaning boats here. So we only have two mechanics that came from other places, actually. Wow. And that's worked fairly successfully for us. Obviously, retaining them and that kind of thing has been, they've grown up here, I guess. Yeah. And so, yeah.
That's really cool.
I mean, in other areas of the business, certainly it's been a challenge trying to find service advisors or parts people. It is a stretch. Even boat washers is hard right now, but.
Yeah, for sure. Tell me just a little bit about how you're doing the Grow Your Own program. I mean, what does that look like? What does it entail? You don't have to go into a ton of detail, but if, share a little bit of insight.
When we have a student who is showing some mechanical aptitude, etc. So two things, I guess. One of which is one of our current apprentice. We actually worked with the local high school and did a co-op program with them, and he came and did his co-op here as an apprentice. Sure. He then stayed through, and we put him through school to be an apprentice. We have a college program, trades program locally, and so he went through there, and then they go and they write an exam here to be a qualified mechanic. It's not a red seal trade, but there's an exam at the end, and since we're paying for their education, we expect that they complete it. And there's financial ties to them as well. So as they complete levels of schooling, they receive increases to their base wage. And so once they're, which goes for all of their certifications. So once they do Mercury certification or Volvo or what have you, then, and they gain those certifications, that's how they give themselves raises, essentially.
Wow. Very cool. Yeah, so it's real world experience right alongside the schooling and education. That's awesome. Right.
And part of their apprenticeship program through the college, they have to do a certain amount of hours in a marine dealership. So yeah. Wow,
very cool. So we talked a little bit about, the additional pressure with people living up there now, the finding and keeping employees, obviously extremely important, and that sort of thing. We talked about the supply chain issues. Carly, I want to get a little bit to the kind of conversation we had previously about your kind of aha moment that you had in the 20 group meeting. Tell us a little bit about that conversation and what was said and how your mind kind of started to shift with the way that you're thinking about the service department.
Sure. And so we are fortunate that we have a great 20 group that we belong to. And, as with any group, even, MRAA and different, going to dealer week and those kinds of things, always there's service questions that come up and areas of opportunity in service departments. And especially when you're looking at inventory, like major unit inventory shortages, you're looking for different avenues of profit. So one of the aha moments came from actually our facilitator who said, how would you look at your business differently if it was a service only business? And it was a huge light bulb for me. And that's what we started to do. We started to look at it not in silos, but to say, okay, if we stopped being able to sell boats today, then what would we do differently to make more money in service? And so that prompted us to create a marketing plan specifically for our service department. It's prompted us to do different things as far as building our team and having them work together better or differently. And how we organize work orders and paperwork and appointments and all those kinds of things, instead of it just going on autopilot. And sometimes I think the service department gets looked at as this necessary evil in our industry, because we are an industry that our revenue is very centered in boat sales, and now that's in question, right? We don't know if we can get the amount of boats that we want or need to be able to sell in order to make the profits that we want. So, hey, this can't just be a necessary evil. This is a huge profit center, and we need to treat it that way.
How do you feel that question? Obviously you noted a couple things that prompted some change and that sort of thing, but in general, how is the shift impacting the business and the approach to how you're running the service department?
Well, it's changed the approach, and now I'm running the service department because I'm now in the service department running the service department. Which in itself, so Jay's been in this role for a bit, and he's worked in the service department for most of his tenure here. I formerly spent a lot more time dealing with administrative side of the business, running it, in part financially, more process driven and those kinds of things. So, and in part, I will say that I was somewhat victim to treating the service department like it was a thorn in my side. And I have had colleagues who have said things like, oh, if you wanted to get to say bad words, you should talk to her about the service department. And only because it can be stressful and it's a lot of moving parts, and it can look like it's just this big, huge money pit, because it does absorb a lot of expenses. But at the same time, I'm super excited to be working with service right now, because I feel like it's a huge opportunity. It's a great opportunity to work closely with the majority of our employees. It's got tons of potential, and it's a little, I won't say limitless. It's, of course there's limits, but there's a lot more opportunities there than there is in boats, where you're very confined to the amount of boats you can get. And yes, there's margins that you move, but
right.
As far as different services that you can offer and how you sell things and how you market things in the service department, I think that there's a lot of growth opportunities there.
For sure. And Jay, were you at that 20 group meeting, or were you?
I wasn't, but I've spent not like I have spent the lion's share of my time in the service department, but my formal schooling is in business and marketing and stuff like that. So I've spent a little bit of time, a little bit of everywhere with sales, and I've done for a long time a lot of sort of customer centric, forward facing part of the dealership. And you know, the thing I can say is in being at 20 groups and seeing how a lot of people, you know, owners or GMs spend a lot of time on that sales side, because it is, you know, it is the, you know, the $1 million baby, and seeing how it's affected Carly to come and sit down and spend some time deep in the service department. It's really been good for our relationship, because a lot of times she'll be, you know, from an administrative accounting side being like, we're not seeing what we need to see here. And me from a practical on the ground in it saying, you can't just look at it on paper, you need to be in it to understand the movement of it. It is a huge opportunity in a lot of places, but also it's an opportunity in that it's not something that everyone does particularly well.
Right.
It is something that our sort of customers have expectations, because it's something that, you know, a luxury car buyer or a luxury car company does do really well. And it's, you know, there is a ton of opportunity to be diverse and to shift and to find niches within the service department where you can really make big impacts.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I love the kind of the dual approach to how it's kind of coming together and tackling that together. That's really cool. And it sounds like, what's that?
It's been good for us.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I don't know if I could say the same working with my siblings, that it's, you know, it's a good thing for them to come in, and that, so that's awesome that it's working so closely together. It sounds like that mentality that, hey, what would you do if it was a service only business? How would you approach it? You could probably apply that across the board in dealership to other areas too. Is that something that you're thinking through at all?
Yeah, so I think you know, services is the baby at the moment, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we're not looking at like our rentals department or
Parts and accessories.
parts
We don't
and
have
accessories.
West Marine or anything here, so parts and accessories is something that we wax and wane in as people's interest. You know, as you get an employee that gets interested in it, so that's certainly on the horizon as well.
Right.
We did that a little bit with F&I a couple of years ago, because F&I was just kind of like up until that point was kind of like the afterthought. And so, you know, we worked with a consultant that specialized in that. I think that it's worthwhile looking at for every business all the time, but I do want to stress that that doesn't mean that you then operate the business in silos. It
Right.
still has to be part of a bigger program, but it just opens your eyes to some of the different areas and that you could do things better within that department, not
Right.
that you should be operating it without this department and this department. We all need to work together.
Yeah.
It's just figuring out where there's opportunities and what our strong suits and where our big holes are.
Right. Yeah, that's a great clarification. And I mean, you know, we're seeing in auto and we're seeing in power sports where there's some direct to consumer sales going on, and some of those dealerships are having to figure out how to survive on service only. And so, you know, it's not a bad idea to be thinking about how would we manage this better if we were a service only organization. So kind of a two-sided or two double question here for you, but first of all, give your facilitator a shout out and talk about how he kind of brought that to you, but also for those people who are here who don't know, give a little bit of a plug for what's a 20 group and how does it work?
Oh yeah, sure. So we belong to a Spader 20 group, and we've been part of a 20 group for a long time. We have had different facilitators and worked with different companies. Right now we are with Spader, and they've been phenomenal. We've had a few different facilitators with them and been in different groups, and by and large, every facilitator that we have, albeit having different strengths or different attributes that they can bring to the group, every time that we've been in there, it's been a huge learning experience. And just to be a little bit more clear about what it is a group of non-competing dealers that have a similar sales volume, or depending on the group, they'll have different criteria basically. And so it allows you to get together with different owners, different dealers that have, either experienced similar problems with you as you or different ones, and help you to work through it. We share financials. So, we have a very intimate view of everybody's dealership. We go and visit each other's dealerships, usually not during COVID, but we're back to that now. They help to do an assessment of the dealership and help us to be better. And so.
And did you mention your facilitator who positioned this question to you?
Yeah, Scott Hamilton was our facilitator.
Yeah,
Great.
sounds like a great question to be thrown around. All right, so here at MRAA, we're focusing a little bit on the whole repair event cycle time conversation. Repair event cycle times, of course, being defined as the amount of time that a boat's in service. Different ways to look at it, but typically it's from the day that the RO is written up until it's closed out and the boat's returned. Throughout these conversations, in other conversations that you're having and working in the service department, what do you feel are some of the kind of key elements or opportunities that dealers have in reducing some of those? And it sounds like maybe you're doing some of that right now with everybody moving up and out in the cottage country and so forth. What are some of those key kind of tactics or elements that you might recommend other dealers consider when it comes to reducing those cycle times?
So one of the things that we really overhauled recently, I guess with my entrance into service on a more full-time focus, was really looking at our how we manage work orders. And I think that this is a more scheduling is a very important piece to this, but this preempts scheduling. So we have moved from a system where if we knew that a boat was coming in, we would put it in the system after we talked to the customer over the phone and what have you. And then when the boat got there, it would be worked on. And then if we needed a part or we had one outstanding issue, that work order would stay there until we got the part or what have you. And we've moved away from that system. So now the only boats that are, and it probably sounds silly, the only boats that are sitting in our work order manager today are boats that are sitting here today that can be worked on. And all of the rest of them are put into an appointment calendar to be dealt with. Once the boat lands here, then it's moved from an appointment into a work order. So that we're now looking at something that's far more manageable. Then we tag all of our work orders. So we have different locations where those boats are. So for us, because we store over 550 boats here, we make sure that there's a location of where they are, and then where they are in the process and what needs to happen next. So we have sort of 3 stages of being able to filter them out easily. So, if you said to me today, hey, Carly, how many inboards do we have that need to be serviced during winter work that are in indoor storage? I could tell you that number within a minute.
Right.
And we couldn't necessarily do that before. We could do it, it would just take a lot longer. And so that being able to get that information at the touch of a button certainly helps that rec thing, because we have to be able to manage a huge amount of information in a way that is manageable for what we can do today.
Right. Yeah, the technology side of it is huge, right? I mean, I can't, we did a study on this topic early, probably middle of last year, and the number of people that are using paper calendars and dry erase boards and stuff to manage all of that is a little bit, I think, probably too high at this point. Jay, how about from your perspective, kind of boots on the ground, what are the elements that help lower those amount of times that the customers are off the water?
So for sure, the biggest thing has been, what Carla was talking about, like getting your ducks in a row before you even start turning wrenches. Like having better, better traffic flow and saying, knowing what's here, what's not here, that kind of thing. That definitely has been a good part of it. The other part of it, the other bite of the elephant is once it, we know it's here, we know why it's coming, and it's something that we're actively working on too. It's everything's a process, but the next step is being more preemptive with parts. This boat's going to be here for a tune-up. Let's make sure the parts are here, that it's going in with the parts versus it's going in and then the tech's got to come and get. It's every single little tiny step of that. Trying to get the right information from the customer. The other thing that's really been a big opportunity is that with the changes that have had to be made with COVID, it has allowed us to shift more into a scheduled, we will schedule your appointment, appointments and scheduling. People are a lot more trained now to not just drop by. They'll call ahead and say, what's your availability? And we're now in a place where we're more organized to say, if your boat is here on this day, it will probably go into the shop on this day. Because before, you didn't have as good of an idea that there was going to be 5 boats landing today for sure.
Right.
Now we know that there will be 5 boats landing today for sure. We may get a drop in, but we can make space for that. But people have been trained more easily, and we have trained people more easily to be more organized with themselves in terms of making an appointment.
Right.
We can also control it. It also allows us to staff things differently or better, or control things differently or better. So as an example, if we know that our lead service advisor isn't here on Monday because she has a dentist appointment, then we don't schedule drop-offs for that day. Right. So we know that we're not going to have to check boats in and all those kinds of things on that day.
Right. Makes total sense. All right. Anything else on that topic? I mean, I know that it's such a huge monster. I mean, all the different components and parts and pieces of trying to figure out how to get people back on the water faster, especially today when everybody's wanting a boat, everybody's wanting to get their boat fixed and back on the water and so forth. Any other thoughts that you want to share with that?
So for me, I think like one of the things that when you look at it and you look at the service department, a lot of reasons people just sort of either avoid it or get frustrated or throw their hands up is because it's like you see leakage everywhere. Yeah. Like everywhere you look. And the best thing I can say is, when you're drilling down into wreck, like just pick one thing, experiment, figure out something that works, then move on to the next thing. Just don't eat the elephant one bite at a time.
Right.
Don't be overwhelmed with how much it is. Focus on one thing, get good at it, focus on the next thing.
Yeah, that's great advice.
I think there's a couple other things that sort of come to mind, which is, we've recently done performance evaluations with our staff, and one of the and getting them on board with some of these things, and one of the things is being resourceful. So whether that is looking for from parts from different sources, or looking at making sure that we're keeping our surgeons in surgery all the time, and realizing that we have a lot of phenomenal staff because we've had a lot of guys who've been here for a really long time. And when you grow those staff, they're able to do a lot of different things. They do one thing really, really exceptionally well, but they do a ton of things well. And you can get into this vortex of, okay, we'll just do it. We'll just take all that stuff in, wherein you can take some of those pieces and outsource them to someone who is that surgeon.
Right.
who does that job really, really well, and keep our guys who are exceptional at what they do, doing what they do best. And you have to be careful because there's egos and feelings involved for sure. And so making sure that they're on the plan there. But I think that that's a huge piece of it. And the other side of it is knowing when to say no. And sometimes that's a really hard decision to make. But getting your service team together and saying, okay, what are those jobs that we up front should just not take? We should turn away because we don't have the tools or the skills, or it just every time we get it, it's a time vacuum and we never win.
Right.
Instead of trying to, make those customers happy because they came through our door, it's a much better conversation to say, I'm really sorry, but ultimately we can't work on your unit because it's going to cost you and us way more money than what you would spend if you went to somebody who had those tools.
Right. Yeah, that's awesome. That's really insightful. Great insight. Well, so those are the questions I had for you guys today. Greatly appreciate you taking the time to spend with us and talk through this. I just want to go on record. You guys are both, you spend a lot of time with the MRAA and giving your time and volunteering, voted Ontario as well. Appreciate all you guys do for supporting the industry and helping to share insights and ideas like this with other dealers. But just want to say thank you for all of that. And again, thank you for your time today. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Matt.
Thanks.